Do you have one or two screens?
Yeah.
I have my second screen.
Yeah. I'm not seeing it on LinkedIn yet. Are you streaming on your end as well?
I'm streaming nowhere. I can stream,
Ah,
but our
that seems
audio
weird.
is routed through your restream.
Ah. How did we do this last time?
I think you streamed to LinkedIn last time. We can flip it around if we'd like to use my restream.
Yeah. I mean, oh, here we go. It's going. We are live
We're
on
live on your
LinkedIn,
end.
I believe.
Yeah, here we
Yeah.
go. Don's live event. Let me share it now.
Yeah. Let's do it.
No
It
need.
took a minute, but
We did a
with
workaround.
technology.
We have some backup headphones if needed.
Nice. Yeah, I think we are live on LinkedIn now.
So I'm ready to go. Would you like to make any introductory remarks, or should we just dive into this list here?
Let's dive into the list.
Great. Well, always good to be with you, Don. These are 7 items top of mind for me. I have no particular timeline in mind, maybe an hour. If questions come in, I'm comfortable to address them as they come in, or we can wait till the end. I don't know if you have a preference. But I think a good starting point. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we can do them as they come in.
Great. So I think a good starting point will be an overall market look. And as we were just chatting about before we got started, we can look at the NASDAQ to see the tech market. And these will have a US bias. So, hey, I'm John, I'm from the US. I've been in the tech industry for about a dozen years at this point. I run latterly.io. Here's blog article 35 about vibe coding, but here's Latterly. Feel free to check it out. It's a platform that helps you accelerate your career in tech. So today we'll be talking about how to perform well on the job, and then also the overall market, getting a job, getting an interview, passing the interview, that sort of thing. And so I'll speak about what I know, which is going to have a US bias. And Don, maybe you can chime in to fill in the gaps with respect to Canada, which I'm very ignorant about. Although the markets correlate, yeah? So the 1 year is, we are now, and this is May like 24th. We're now about 10% up on the year. And there's a bit of history in this chart. So we had the election in November. The markets were optimistic going in. I think that's because they priced in a Trump election. And the theory at the time is that a Republican president would be good for the economy. Then we proceeded in late December to have, maybe crisis is a bit too dramatic, but definitely an H-1B immigration related event fiasco, I think is the term I used earlier. And that took the market horizontal. So it sort of neutralized the forward progress, but it wasn't enough in itself to drop the market. When the new year and the tariff news came in, we saw a knife to the heart, particularly for the tech market. And maybe this fear was a little bit overshooting the reality of the impact of the tariffs, so that now we have had a bit of recovery. And some of that recovery has been forward progress on the tariff front. So tariffs being canceled or reduced or negotiated. I'm not like a policy expert on these tariffs, but basically you can see the state of the art today. So this will be a tech look. And then for the general market, we can look at the S&P. And it tells a similar story, although the drawdown is not quite as severe. But overall, we're about 10% on the year here as well. So this is a broad look, and then we have a tech look, but I'm even more confident around predictions that are more narrowly focused on the software engineering job family. And for that, I would not look at any of these Wall Street indicators. I would go to the job count. And I like true up. We can talk about the Fed graph and why that has problems. But I think this is an accurate story. So post-COVID, we had a drop, and we've basically had a sustainable growth ever since. This is not to the moon. This is not rocketing, but it's a sustainable uptrend. That's my thought. What do you think of this graph?
I think it tracks with a lot of the sentiment around AI lowering headcount. One thing that was interesting with the H-1B situation that is, I'm sorry about that. But I think what's interesting about the H-1B situation in the US compared to Canada is we have a similar thing with slowing down immigration. And a large part of our economy, now we find, in retrospect, that was propped up by this, relatively open immigration. And now we're seeing a sharp correction in the real estate market in Canada, which, for those of you not familiar, the biggest three industries in Canada are natural resources, banking, and real estate. So when one of those things are doing well, or if essentially our economy is pegged to those three things.
Good. Natural resources, maple syrup, right? Okay.
Maple syrup and Canadian lumber.
Good. So you made a remark about AI. I think that's interesting. It relates to the Fed graph.
Yeah.
So let me show this.
I want to add something to the context here. What I found really interesting about this was someone from Shopify said, first prove it to me that AI can't do the job before you go hiring. And I think it's a sign of the times.
I'll just give this 30 seconds if I can't find it. I think it was the St. Louis Fed.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So here's an infamous graph, and I guess people will take different job slices or time slices and tell various stories, but basically looks really pessimistic, right? The first thing to note is this spike was largely a result of COVID-related subsidy. And so if you thought this was natural growth, then it would look like a crash. But it's actually a correction for the lack of subsidy.
Yeah, I think
the other
I
thing.
think also a quick thing.
Yeah.
A quick thing to add there, John, is I feel like we rushed online because of COVID.
Yeah.
So there's been this like backfill that has since been burned down.
Right. This is also not Federal Reserve data. This is Indeed data. So if you go to the source, a lot of people miss this. They don't even know what the data source is. You'll come to the hiring lab, and basically AI roles are excluded, and that's a real problem. So let's contrast this with true up. So we see a spike and a crash, let's say, and that jives with this. But true up shows a sustainable recovery, up almost 50%. from the bottom, where the Indeed shows a continued decline. So I won't bury the lead. The increasing share of software engineering jobs using AI is the reason for the discrepancy. So if you're a software engineer, you should be studying how to use AI. And then you can look forward to job growth instead of continued decline.
I got a question
Yeah.
about this not including AI jobs. What constitutes an AI job? Is it like machine learning engineer? Is it data scientist? I feel like that field is pretty wide.
It's keyword based.
Mm.
So let's see if I can find the original data, but Indeed uses keyword selection. And so if a software engineering job includes machine learning or AI, it will be excluded from this graph. And there's a GitHub issue I filed months ago on this topic. Software engineering jobs are underrepresented. Let's see if I can quickly find it.
Yeah, I would say it's fair to put it under software engineering, right?
It is.
All
Because
the,
an
all the
AI
data related stuff
engineer,
too.
what was that?
I was gonna say even the data related stuff is still could be under software engineering.
And an AI engineer is a back-end software engineer that knows how to
Yes,
integrate a language model.
exactly. Yeah, it is backend software engineering, 100%. Hey, can you build a service? Well, that's backend software engineering. Or do you have to build a service for something?
Can I build a service? What do you mean?
No, I was just saying as an example. So, like, if
Yeah.
you have to build any sort of service, the second you say, "I need a text to speech or a speech to text," right? Then that's backend software engineering.
Yeah, agree. All right, let's give this 30 seconds and we can move on. I think this website changed around a little bit. So there was a data tab. Oh, here's data. Yeah, so you see job postings down, but the AI is up. And basically, if you squish them together, it's going to look like this.
Yeah, let's have them side by side. I'd love to see that because I feel like that would paint a macro optimistic picture for us.
This one?
Yeah. So that's the AI jobs,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And Gen AI is similar.
Okay.
Country. Again, I'm thinking US.
Yeah. Wow. Would you look at that?
So get comfortable with ChatGPT.
Yeah, get comfortable with gluing things together with LangChain and building REST APIs and putting those together and building agents.
Yep. Okay. This is an interesting transition to point two. So now that generative AI is taking over, is LeetCode dead? You'll be aware that a tool went viral.
Yes.
Do you remember the name of it?
I remember that it was big enough to get for that person to get kicked out of school, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is
it's called
is the wrong way to reward this kind of enterprising behavior, resourceful behavior. Yeah.
I think it's called like Interview Coder or something. So this is the guy, and you referred to he was kicked out of school. So he was a Columbia student. Yeah, Interview Coder.
Interview Coder, okay.
This is the tool. And basically, it uses screen capture so that when you're on a call in an interview, if it picks up a LeetCode question, it automatically sends it to Chat GPT, and gives you the answer.
So I have some thoughts here. I think the first thing that comes to mind is I remember, I'm not sure if they do it now, but Shopify, since late, yeah, mid to late 2024, allows AI agents on interview rounds. So I'm wondering, is this something that they can, so they as in the person being interviewed, is this something they can disclose ahead of time, or I don't know. I think for companies like Shopify who are open minded, this doesn't have to be something you hide.
I agree. I think ideally no one is hiding anything, right? And we can be
Yeah.
transparent. Transparency is great. Let's see if Shopify is here. No, I don't see them.
Well,
Here's a
this is
list of
hiring without
companies.
whiteboards.
Yeah.
This is hiring
So,
without whiteboards, right? So Shopify still does algorithms and like the lead code style stuff, but they just allow AI.
yeah. So we're at an interesting crossroads.
Mm,
In some companies, transparently allow language models during the interview. I love that because we're using them on the job, right?
yeah.
Others don't. And the question is, should you cheat? I'm going to vote no, basically, just to get to the answer. Um, but if they allow it, use it, right? That's not
Yeah.
cheating. What do you mean by cheating? We mean when you get a list of interview guidelines, when you break that, that's cheating. So I think Amazon still prohibits the use of a language model during the interview. Interestingly, they allow you to look up syntax.
Hmm.
And I would argue that this clause is a bridge which could allow us to use language models in the future because they are basically quick references where I think you're expected to go to Google or something like that. Really, the expectation is that you should have this stuff memorized. Officially, they allow you to look up syntax, but unofficially, if you have to, it's kind of a bad look. It's like the equivalent of getting a hint, which is not against the rules, but when they calibrate you, they sort of give you a red mark. Like, ideally, you don't need any hints or something like that.
Yeah. This is something interesting. Like if they allow you to look up whatever online, should they block you from using AI? I think it doesn't really matter. I don't think it matters if you are allowed to use it or if you're not. I think the scale of the problem is going to be dependent on if you're allowed to use an LLM,
Yeah,
right? Like wouldn't the problem already take into account this LLM problem, so to speak, is being solved too easily by an LLM? So
ideally.
they would have presumably, right, accounted for that.
Ideally, but we're not there. So there's a new category
Hmm.
of interview problem that is language model resistant.
Ah, okay.
So rounds.so makes a product where this is their pitch. They have an AI assessment.
I see.
And these graphics confuse most language models, these graphical problems.
All right. I see.
Although I think
Pose the
it's a
problem
matter of
differently.
time until AI solves these. So it's a bit of a moving target, right?
Mm, yeah, it's like posing the question a little differently, right?
Yeah. And in
That's
particular,
interesting.
using graphics, where this is very intuitive to a human, but
Yeah,
to a language model or even a multimodal model, there is a relative deficit in the ability to understand the logic of these images.
I see. So this is interesting to me because I always assumed that something AI proof sorry, a problem that would be AI proof would have sufficient scale and scope, but that is not the case. They are posing relatively straightforward problems in a different way. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
There's both approaches. So some companies will use project-based interview, but that
Hmm.
won't be your Amazon, your Facebook, and so on, right? So big tech is sticking closely to the DSA model, where in the hiring without whiteboards, a lot of these folks will use a project-based interview. And there I see a lot of receptiveness to, if you're doing a project, you can use AI. And maybe
A
they
take home
do,
project?
go ahead.
Was it a take home project you were saying?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of receptiveness
Hmm.
to, we're going to give you a take home project, but you can use AI. But maybe they scale up the complexity of the project, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've certainly seen that one. I think um, if I were to throw a hint for something like to maybe inspire employers, inspire employees, I think the best projects that are AI proof are ones that require you to do something from end to end, like build me an app using this language and deploy it and give me a link to it. I think
Yeah.
for that you need sufficient manual work as well as some AI to plug in the gaps.
Related to this, I've done a study or a quick survey anyway. I asked on LinkedIn
Mm,
if you in a big tech coding round, even using the latest tools. So here I have in mind Interview Coder. There's a better than 20% chance you get caught. And I asked people if they agree or disagree. Most people agree.
yeah,
So you can get caught using this. Amazon has tools to detect whether you're using this. And then there's also interviewer acuity, and there's a high false positive rate, but basically sometimes they can tell. So an
yeah,
instance of
definitely.
this will be if you are in a pool of applicants and a lot of people struggle and they do the typical DSA process where they ask for clarification, they go through the 14 patterns, they pick this is a sliding window or whatever it might be. They go through the complexity analysis and then code. So they follow traditional etiquette. It looks very different when someone else just starts like typing the answer or something like
Yeah,
that. It looks really
yeah.
suspicious, right?
They start writing the class like just
Yeah.
without anything. I think 100%, like an experienced interviewer, such as ourselves, or someone who's authored the problem, they would definitely know like where an engineer really starts like pulling at the common threads, right? Um, and also like when people ask, "Hey, describe how your code works," or like, "Tell me how this interface works," or what would the documentation look like, or what would the testing for this particular piece of code look like? When those questions are asked, when they look for depth, that just wouldn't be there.
Yes, depth. Also, you mentioned when the interviewer authored their own question, this really trips up AI. And interviewing.io has research on this. They asked, how hard is it to cheat in technical interviews? People can read through the article. Basically, if you ask a custom question, this is hard for AI to solve, right?
Yeah, I've seen both ends of this. Like I've seen instances where AI is really good at a certain thing and also can back up what it's talking about with sufficient detail, like where it's coherent, it makes sense. I find that those examples are centered around very particular use cases. Like I use LLMs quite a bit for generating SQL, where it's clear what you're doing, right? Like you have a schema, you have something you're trying to do, and you're describing it to the best of your ability. And that's a place where it works. And another place is with markup based languages. So create me some HTML, create me JSON. So those cases it works well, but in nuanced cases like the one you described, yeah, it falls flat on its face.
Nuanced cases, agree. Even cases where the question is relatively straightforward, if it's custom, the language model may not know how to answer it. So you can see here, custom questions, interviewees using ChatGPT only passed a quarter of the time, where they passed slightly over 50% of the time at baseline. And using ChatGPT, even a verbatim leak code question was only solved about 70% of the time. So combine this 70% with the chance that you get caught from my survey, and it looks like a wash, right?
Yeah.
So my TLDR is that cheating is its own skill set. You have to practice, how do I use this interview coder tool? How do I send the question to ChatGPT, get the answer, transmit the answer in a way that looks like I didn't cheat? So being crafty or whatever, mimicking etiquette only to give off a pre-authored answer, and then pretending like you understand that answer. This is
A
its
lot of
whole
mental
own
overhead.
skill set, and it's actually non-trivial.
Yeah.
So it ends up being like a wash, 50-50 either way. But if you cheat and you get caught, you're likely blacklisted. Where if you just fail on your own merit, you can try again in 6 or 12 months or whatever.
Yeah, protect your reputation.
There's reputation. And so there's two different things here. One is just on pragmatic grounds. The state of the art, May 2025, I'm saying it doesn't even make pragmatic sense to cheat. But then there's also the whole ethical concern and reputation in this. So, let's chat in a few years. But at the moment, I'm saying, like, I don't think it's smart, even setting the ethics aside. And then for me, of course, I would not set it aside and I would add it on. And then it's like really clear.
Yeah. Yeah. One tip I would like to mention is if LLMs are allowed during the coding challenge, I would definitely break down the problem into as small chunks as possible and get the LLM to create the solution that way instead of trying to like gobble the whole problem. And outside of that, yeah, if you have a take-home challenge, then the world is your oyster, right?
Yeah.
Try plugging into the LLM, see what happens.
I'm with you. And I give my advice to candidates, but let me say to employers, I encourage you to allow language models in the interview. People are going to be using it on the job. You should get signal on whether they have this skill, because this is something you're actually hiring for. So I want to push employers in that direction. But the short run advice to candidates is, follow the rules. One of the things interviewers are looking for is, do you follow the rules? If I hire you, if I give you a task, are you going to do it the expected way? So there's two sides. One is to candidates, if they say don't use a model, don't use it. If they say do use a model, please use it. And then employers, if you're open-minded, if you're on the fence, allow it. I would encourage you to allow it because we're going to be using it. In terms of how to use the language model, Article 35, I encourage the audience to read this. Yeah, I'm with you. Breaking down the problem is a good move. Get those requests to the language model to be as simple as possible. And I follow a sandwich model where you give really good context up front, then you sort of let the model run free and vibe with it, and then you have strong gates at the end. So before going to production, I'm going to encourage you to run unit tests, run type checks, run build checks, use a linter, use a formatter. So that's what I call the sandwich model.
Yeah, I think, yeah, this vibe coding thing, people make it more than what it is. It's like the advent of the calculator to mathematics. It's like
Yeah.
the drill and the automatic tools to woodworking, right? Like fundamentally, woodworking, software engineering has not changed. It's just that there's this additional thing in your tool chain, right? Like, um, yeah, it's great. I think a lot of in practice, vibe coding has transformed a lot of my front end development efforts, right? Like getting it to create React components for me, getting it, as I said, to write SQL for me. So those things, they don't replace software engineers, but they do replace those very narrow roles that may have been centered around one or two very narrow tasks.
Right. I like the calculator analogy. I think it's accurate. As a technologist, even as an economist, I think it's accurate. Okay, shall we transition to the job search? So we talked about the market, we talked about this leak code thing, but what if you're not even getting interviews?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same boring advice, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. This, given the market context, you can see now it becomes plausible that tools that worked in the past should still work because we removed the myth that the tech job market is crashing. We addressed the fact that, okay, work with language models, but that's pretty much the only difference. And a lot of companies won't even let you do that. In that case, the interview looks as it always has. And I think the advice for application is similar, is that most of it is similar. And then there are some edges where you can get an advantage from AI. But we still want to cover the basic part before we cover the edge case with AI. And the basic part is make sure your resume is optimized, make sure your LinkedIn looks good. And the real gap that I see is not jobs are saturated or jobs are missing. I see a gap that is a classic gap that's been there for decades with software engineers, which is a lack of effective social networking. So the mental model here is, I mean, we can go through the weeds if you want, but basically Article 9 on the blog will tell you how to optimize your resume in LinkedIn. There's some AI involved in, you know, the scan or whatever, but you want to make sure machines can read your resume. So check out this guide here. And then
Yep.
the mental model I want to suggest is when your resume looks good and your LinkedIn looks good, this is just the foundation. This isn't your golden ticket. This is going to get you to a 1% application to interview ratio. So it's a shield guarding you from doing worse than that. But if you want to do better than that, the real secret sauce is social networking and soft skills. And
Yeah,
if we have time to go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, John, I was gonna say that you hit the nail on the head when you started off this thing where if you're not getting interviews, it's because you're not communicating your value or you're not using the real estate that's given to you in an effective way,
Yeah.
right? Like with the resume, I'm a little close to this, but I've reviewed now, I think thousands at this point of resumes, and it's very rare that I see a resume that I'm impressed with. And I think I'm likely going to make some content around this, but the long story short is your resume is your resume is a prime piece of real estate for you to market yourself. And a lot of people, they make it too dense and they make it so that their resume looks like every other resume.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to have worked with someone, a designer, um, whose resume, when I saw it, I was just blown away because it was one page and it covered like 10 years of experience. Like this person's a senior product designer. So I think there's still a lot of effort that can be put into a resume. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I don't know how much time should we spend on this. I'm happy to if you want. But
I,
basically, here's my own
yeah.
LinkedIn. Don't do
Hmm.
this. This looks bad. And the main problem with this, as you say, is I'm not showing my value. And when we say that, one of the key ways you show your value is with quantitative impact. And I don't have it in this first one, right? I'm not really on the job search, so I don't care. But this would be a better one. I think it's a touch long. I like to go to 3 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's a touch long.
Yeah, I love the fact that you showed the scale of the company, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not a, it's not a company that's small. It's large, right? So um, that's that's one of the common pitfalls that I see engineers fall into is like they'll come in here and they'll say worked with React to build web pages
Yeah.
for customer facing whatever, right? Like
But what was
so
the impact? Show me the
yeah,
numbers.
exactly. What's the outcome?
Newsflash to the audience: employers care about dollars. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
How can they
exactly.
estimate their return on investment to hiring you if they don't know how much money you're going to make them? They know what they are willing to spend, but that doesn't give you an ROI. You need to go benefit divided by cost, right? That's your
Yeah,
ROI.
and also establishing a proven track record, right? Like
Yeah.
when you have this written out like this, it just shows like the trajectory of your career.
Yeah.
One
So you're getting
one
into
other
some of the nuance here. And you're
yeah,
right that the bare minimum is make sure that your resume is parsable and you're showing impact. But beyond the bare minimum, there are these more nuanced bits. You want to show a trajectory. So, one tip that I'll add there, and you may have several others, I do encourage very senior individuals to clip their experience of the most recent 15 years.
hmm yeah,
Um, because you want to show a relevant track record, and some of that stuff just doesn't matter and it's distracting. It dilutes your profile.
yeah,
There's also things you can do. I'm comfortable with playing with job titles. I'm fine with that. So if your job title at a company was junior software engineer, I think it's totally valid to say that's still a software engineer.
100%.
So I would
Yeah,
encourage folks, do not refer to yourself as junior. Even if your title is junior, just don't put it here. Just say software engineer.
save the
Um,
space.
yeah, yeah. And it's not dishonest. What's a software engineer? It's a software developer. These are synonyms. Sorry. And we fulfill a role. We have certain behaviors. There's things we do. We develop software. It's on the tin. It's quite literally software developer develops software. So if you have built a portfolio on GitHub, you've developed software. You're a software developer, and you don't need to call yourself junior, even if you're applying to job posts that have junior in the title. It's a matter of positioning yourself for perceived value. So don't devalue yourself. Don't devalue yourself. Anything else you want to say on this?
I think the broad strokes were covered. One thing I may add is focus a little bit on the projects you're working on,
Yeah.
especially in following your passions, which I think with the development of LLMs and this idea of vibe coding, I think now is the time hasn't been better than now to create small projects, right?
Right.
They can start off as vibe coded projects, and you can bolster your own understanding by taking a vibe coded project and then take it apart and add a feature to it. See how it works. See how it feels like to. And I'm not saying this in a bad way. Just like see how it feels like to maintain a vibe coded project.
Yeah.
See if that's even plausible.
Thank you, Don. One thing that I hear on TikTok is a fear of building a GPT wrapper. Oh, your silly project. It's only a chat GPT wrapper. And
Hey,
my retort
let me
is,
interject here quick.
yeah,
Let me interject here quick with the Chat GPT wrappers. As a former GPT wrapper hater, um, one of my previous projects, Mave AI, we raised 2 million off a GPT wrapper. So yeah,
yes,
yeah.
this is the
Keep
way.
building those GPT wrappers.
My retort to the haters is for the student, early career individual. If you're senior, whatever, skip, swipe, just ignore the next 30 seconds. But if you're a college student, if you're a career switcher, if you're early career, please build a chat GPT wrapper. Please build one as part of your portfolio. Senior individuals, don't worry about building out a portfolio. You're already senior. Early career, a strong portfolio is great because you don't have that professional experience to draw on. So draw on your portfolio, right? And a chat GPT wrapper is going to get your foot in the door of AI engineering. And earlier we covered how it's up and to the right, in particular, generative AI. And in case it wasn't clear earlier, ChatGPT is generative AI. So by building a ChatGPT wrapper, you're building, admittedly, a relatively simple one, but it's your portfolio, so that's fine. You're building a generative AI project. Just the keywords on your resume alone, or the keywords on your LinkedIn, is going to do you a service. Okay, and Latterly has opinions about your portfolio. If you're like, okay, we said projects are important, but I don't know where to start, here's a starting point. If you're wondering, I mean, if you've already done projects, don't worry about it. But if you're wondering, I basically advocate a blog because everyone knows what a blog is. It's straightforward to build. You can vibe code it, you can build it traditionally, and then you can explain it to the employer, and they know exactly what you're talking about. There's no confusion. It's like, okay, it's a blog. But it
Yeah,
also checks the boxes of front end, back end, full stack, CRUD, API, REST. If you want, you can add a language model to a blog, really straightforward recommendation system. So you can do the things that matter.
yeah. With these blog and these various projects, one thing I've noticed over the years is you need. Also, my daughter is knocking on my door. I don't know if that's
No problem at
distracting.
all.
but I think one thing over the years that's worked really well with these projects is collecting metrics and
Yeah.
saying, I vibe coded I don't know a blog. It got this many reads. Oh, how did you
Yeah.
track reads? You know, so that collecting metrics, it opens the door to more questions and it builds trust.
Yeah. It builds trust, it gives you evidence, and it can give you confidence in, if you frame it properly, you can show strong accomplishment even with a small project. So add Google Analytics to your project, get some real signups, get some real views, talk about it on TikTok. So building in public, I'm a big fan of this. And try to use percentage-based metrics when it benefits you. So with a small project, if I sign up 10 people, so I started with myself and then I signed up 9 others. That's a 1000% increase, right? And maybe that's like such a big increase that it becomes credulous to the employer. So you want to pick metrics that resonate with the employer. But the lesson here would be um, going for that percentage is going to look more impressive than saying I have 10 signups, right? And this works on the job as well. So if you're coming from a startup background and you're applying to Amazon, maybe you're like on the job experience, you only have like 5 TPS scale. like to Amazon, that's nothing. So maybe you want to go for the percentage increase. Instead of 5 to 10, we doubled. And then in Amazon's ears, whoa, if they doubled impact, that could be a great ROI, right? Because now that they're in an Amazon context, what if they double the impact of our project? That's a really big deal. So when we talk about quantitative impact, strategically choosing whether to use a level metric or a percentage metric. Hope that wasn't too into weeds, but I think it's a useful tip. All right, so how do we do social networking? I won't spend too much time here because there's a lot to say. I'll just point you to some articles. Once again, you can go to the Latterly blog. The pro tip is on LinkedIn. First of all, have a LinkedIn, have it optimized post. So like post a few times a week at least. Add people, so be connecting to people. And I would say when you apply to a job, you need to connect with someone on LinkedIn for every job post, or you just shouldn't count it. Why would you not count it? The reason is because the data says that will be a weak application. So this is blog article number 15. You can see this low effort thing. Basically, it's bad. So if you take the constant, if you deduct the coefficient, you're right back at that 1% mark. So it's going to be like about 0.01, give or take. And we want to do better than that. So how do we do better? We avoid low effort applications, and then we try to get referrals. What's a low effort application? It's one where you made no attempt to social network. So you get a 10x benefit right there. You go from 1% to 0.1. This was in my job search. Your mileage may vary. More realistically, I see 2 to 5 is like a pretty good performing for a lot of the people that I work with. If you have a really attractive profile, you can get up to 10% application to interview ratio, but it's really hard to beat that. Does that jive with what you've seen?
Yeah, I think 10 to 15% is like the top. One thing I will say is for the referrals, a strategy that's worked. I mean, I don't get too many referrals, but a strategy that I've seen work with my clients is you start looking for that referral weeks, months before.
If possible, yeah.
Like when they're in the passive search or the practicing search. We talked about this in the last live session, where you practice with a bunch of companies before you get those to that critical Microsoft, Amazon, whatever loop you want to get into. And also maybe another way to do this, and I think I'm seeing this on LinkedIn, is creating a product that other developers may use.
Yeah.
And then showing someone that product, getting some feedback, and then saying, hey, like based on what you saw, would you refer me to your company?
That's right.
I think it's a definite, like, you can't lead with this referral. You've got to lead with something else.
I think you can lead both ways, but this concept would be the concept of lead nurturing. So you can view the job search as a sales funnel, and you can think of referrals as sales leads. And a referral or a sales lead might be cold, warm, or hot. So someone who's hot is likely to give you a referral. If you don't know them, they're not hot. What you can do is add them to your network, be posting, and they will passively warm just by being in your network, seeing your stuff over time. React with them, reply, like their stuff, they like your stuff. Now they're heating up. And you're right, getting a referral that way is proportionally much more effective, but it takes a lot of time. Similarly, with inbound opportunities, you need to build a professional brand. And this is hard to do. It takes time. But once you do it, you can be getting a lot of interviews. So in 2024, when I was on the job search, half of my first round interviews were inbound because I had this established brand.
Yeah.
That's hard
Yeah.
for me to teach you in a short term. We can do that over the course of a year or multiple years. Over the short term, though, cold referral seeking does work. It's proportionally less effective than warm or hot. Showing your portfolio or showing a product and getting feedback would be a warm lead strategy. And I think it works really well. I think it's a great move. And being able to take feedback well is a super green flag that
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
encourage people to refer you, or even during the interview, if you can turn to a conversation where if someone corrects you, don't argue with them, thank them. And so you're signaling, I take feedback really well. That's going to go well for you in
Yeah.
the interview, but it also works at social networking time. For cold
If I
referral
if I
seeking,
may,
go ahead.
John, if I may add something before we forget, if you want to go back to that one screen where you had the inbound, what was it, inbound lead or something
Yeah,
like that. One strategy that I've seen with one of my clients that worked out really well was a few years ago, he made a video of a piece of UI on a website that he thought was clunky, unrefined, whatever you want to call it. And he went through a time lapse video of him coding a better version of it side by
nice.
side. So if you can create a viral moment like that, and I think his numbers on that video was like he got like 3 inbound opportunities, 2 of which happened to be really good, and the rest is history, so to speak. But if you can create a viral moment using some platform or some technology or something that's like highly relevant at the time, um, that could be a time efficient way of like landing a bunch of inbound opportunities.
Absolutely. Going viral is low probability, high impact. High impact.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where I can't really tell you how to go viral. I can give you some tips like jokes do well. When you, if you're laid off or if you start the job search, making a post like that that's like, hey, I'm on the job search, like those can go well sometimes. But the basic
Yeah.
advice here is I'm a content creator. Like I create content all the time. And maybe you know better than me, Don, but I very often don't know what's going to go viral. And so
Right.
strategically, just consistently make content and you might go viral. And you're right that I've seen this many times as well, is that if someone does go viral, they could get multiple inbound opportunities off of just like one nice post.
Yeah.
Anything else on the virality side?
No, no, I think if you want to really increase your surface area for success, couple the virality with some kind of inbound channel where like they can, like a landing page or something where you can capture this newfangled interest. Don't let it
Sure.
go to waste.
Good tip. Good tip. Okay. One last note on cold referral seeking. I'll point you to article number 17. There's a bunch of scripts here. So I would encourage the job candidate to reach out to fellow engineers, hiring managers, and technical recruiters. So these 3 job families. And here's like a bunch of examples of stuff that you can say to them or whatever seems natural to you, right? So the scripts are mainly to solve a pain point where if you don't know what to say, you can say this stuff. But if you have like a burning line that you think is going to work, like go for it. Do be A/B testing, do collect metrics, and you can
Yeah.
refine your spiel over time. But this is a good starting point if you don't know where to start. In particular, I've A/B tested a number of scripts, and this one works relatively well for cold referral seeking. It's not as good as reaching out to a hot lead, someone who's been in your network for a long time. But if you have a small network, this can work really well compared to doing nothing.
Yeah, I love these. I
And
love these
so
prompts.
how well does this perform? We're looking at, like, if I recall correctly, around 3, 4, 5%. But that's actually pretty good for getting a referral from someone you just added like yesterday.
Yeah, and these prompts are great because they give you a starting point until you find your own voice.
Yeah.
Because right now, like when I do it, it's very quick. Or like when someone reaches out to me, is like, hey, how can I deal with this situation? It comes with practice.
Yeah.
And part of that is understanding that this is a numbers game and you have to get a certain number of no's, a certain number of ghosts, where you know you're subject to ghosting, um, before things before you get a yes.
I love it. So to your point, should we go for quantity or quality in the job search? I would encourage you to do both. So you can get a job with a 1% application to interview ratio. It's just going to be a lot of effort and a lot of applications. I don't really encourage that, but it can work. You can get a 20% application to interview ratio if you heat all of your leads and you're super selective. But I don't recommend that either because it takes more time. The number of relevant job posts where you match that well are relatively small in number. So I'm a real advocate that 3 to 5% is a sweet spot application to interview ratio. Even 2% is acceptable. And the reason I like that is because I would encourage early career folks to be doing 80 to 100 applications per week. If you're late career, you can do less. If you're casually looking, you can do less. Why that number? Because we want to get statistical feedback every week. 80 to 100 lets us do some data analysis. Right. And this is just well, it's not just my opinion. It's based on working with a bunch of people. 2 to 4 interviews per week is about as much as people can handle. If you're doing like I just have never seen, maybe there's a rock star out there somewhere, but I've never seen someone do 6 interviews in 1 week and they adequately prepared for all of them.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of want to work backwards from anywhere from like 1 to 4, maybe 5 interviews per week. What's comfortable to you? What can you prepare for? 1 feels a bit low, but it can be okay, particularly if you're casually looking. 5 feels really aggressive to me. And I don't just mean as a matter of opinion. I mean based on recalling people that I've worked with that like did 5 in a week. So 2 to 4, I think that looks good. You work backwards, and off the interview ratio, you can see how often you should be applying.
Yeah, I think it's really important you get a statistically significant amount of applications out there, and you get more than 1 interview per week. What I've seen that helps me and some of the people I work with is be in different parts of the interview loops with different companies. I find you can likely balance 5 interviews a week as long as they're not 5 lead code rounds. I think 5 lead code
Okay.
rounds would leave you like kind of mentally drained. Prepping for
Yeah,
and then going through that.
if you're comfortable, I can see that. Even behavioral is hard to do 5 fresh ones, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is a good transition point to the engineering traits. But if you've been interviewing for a while and you have your behavioral answers down, like all practiced, then yeah, maybe you can dish them out relatively easily. So, how do you know a good behavioral answer? You know that because it will communicate your impact, as we discussed earlier, and it will also send skill signals. These will be unique to each company. Amazon famously has the leadership principles. So look at your company, like they might talk about their values or their culture or whatever. Try to pick up those signals. Formation has a nice generic blueprint for general prep. and they are called the valued engineering traits. These will help you at the behavioral interview and on the job because these traits form skill matrices, which are used for hiring decisions and also for performance review. And these are going to be things like your ability to persuade, lead, influence, deal with ambiguity, communicate, and so on. These skills, particularly soft skills. So I won't spend too much time here, but I'll just point you to this article. Being able to prioritize impact, judgment, ownership, collaboration, growth mindset. These can help you generally prepare good behavioral answers, and they will also help you on the job. Any other thoughts around this?
No, I think that's great that you mentioned these skills help with um, keeping an upward trajectory on your performance as well, because this is something that's like top of mind with my clients. Is that um, yeah, you got the tech job. Now, how do you keep it so that you reach your equity cliff and get into the
Yeah,
mid game? Do you have any thoughts here, John? In like how can you be the most effective at the 30, 60, 90-day mark and like send out a strong performance signal for quarters to come?
that's great. Taro has an onboarding guide. I don't know if I do. Let me check my own blog. Oh, it's a premium article. Um, Let me give you the secret sauce. I'll come back to the journal. Tell you about this onboarding guide. 30, 60, 90-day plan is a pro tip. That can be outlined during the interview. And I would encourage you to try to propose a plan instead of just asking about one. Asking about one is fine. It's like a B level move, a tier two move. The tier one move is communicate to the employer that you already know what you're doing and say, you've seen my resume, you saw my interview performance, and here's specifically how I'm going to make an impact and propose a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and then do invite feedback, right? So it becomes a negotiation, but it's a negotiation where you're leading, and that will make you look like really senior and competent.
Mm, that's a
Um,
really interesting perspective, because usually what I say is get them to define the goalposts in terms of
sure.
like what they're looking for. But no, this is interesting.
You only want to propose if you have a good plan. um, if you've
Hmm.
worked at a prior company and you did a thing where you made an impact, you can basically suggest that you're going to make a similar strong impact here. If you're early career and you just haven't made a big splash, asking is smart, and getting clear gold posts is always smart. But are you leading in the negotiation or not is a nice lever. If they clarify first, you can still follow up and say, "Oh, okay, good plan. I'm aligned, and here's how I'm going to crush it. That looks good." But I would encourage you to try to take the lead, and here's why. So I'm a staff engineer, and this happens more at my level or at the principal level, plus VP, director, CTO. At some point, you want to know more than the person interviewing you, and you want to show them that you actually know more than they do. So this is like a true leadership role. And Steve Jobs would talk about this, that he wants to hire people that know more than he knows, right? So for these roles, it's a really green flag if you can propose the plan. Um,
Mm.
Mid-level, senior, more ambiguous, early career, totally not an expectation. But either way, you get 30, 60, 90 days. You end up with a clear picture, crush that plan. That's going to keep you safe for probably half a year. So if you do well onboarding, your reputation will positively overshoot and you'll be safe into Q2. But then
Yeah.
you need to be delivering. Um,
Yeah.
and there's
Hmm.
definitely a recency bias, whether interviewing or on the job. You want to be able to show I didn't just onboard well, I actually did well on year. Um, and so onboarding super crucial. You can read this guide, align with your manager. You're going to want to continue to do this. Take advantage of those one-on-ones, right? Um, and here's where the magic loop comes in. So we'll talk about that momentarily. The other thing is I would just shout out Taro's guide. Yeah. So it's linked in the bottom. Here's a really good onboarding course. I liked it. I've used it. By the way, Latterly has like a discount for Taro, so you can check them out. We also have a discount on formation. So we talked about the formation valued engineering traits, but they have a really comprehensive like interview prep program. So you can check that out if you want. Okay, so we onboarded, we're continuously aligning with the manager. So we do agile, like sprints, iteratively reassess, reprioritize, and then deliver. So Cornerstone 1 is you're aligned with your manager and you onboarded well. Cornerstone 2 is you are continuously delivering. Like when you make your quarterly plans and your sprint plans, like deliver them. This is kind of like table stakes doing your job. So here's a red flag in contrast. Sprint after sprint, I estimate this task will take 3 days and it takes 10. So my tickets are rolling over and they're taking more time than I said they would. That's like a red flag. And here's really basic tactics, but I guess they're worth mentioning. Like if you're not sure, overestimate, you know? So under promise, over deliver, right? Kind of like basic do your job wisdom. So Cornerstone
Yeah.
1, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that tracks with what I'm thinking about. Another thing would be to be an effective navigator of the code. So
Yeah.
you mentioned this, coming up with better estimates. I think, yeah, if you don't know how to estimate something or like there's not enough information, I think it's totally valid to cut another ticket to do some more digging, right? You
Yes.
got to go explore further. And then if things need to roll over to the next sprint, you need to have a good answer as to why that is, like what
Yes.
blockers are there, like what you've done thus far to overcome blockers. I think that really helps in getting help as well. Is like if you can pose the problem well, it's half solved, right? Like this is the issue I ran into. Here's what I've tried thus far. What else do y'all suggest? Those are two things that come up top of mind. And along the keep shipping uh, mindset, I think when you're dealing with ambiguity, it's always good to err on the side of shipping. Like in the sense, if we don't know what this particular piece of UI is supposed to look like, why don't you ship out an MVP and see how your users react? Right, put it behind a feature flag, right? Like roll it out in a limited way and then gather feedback and iterate from there and make it clear that, hey, like we don't know actually, like you have to have some humility as well and be a little vulnerable, say, hey, like we don't know how to build this thing, or like, we don't know what this thing is supposed to look like, right? So we're trying A, B, and C to do that, right?
Okay. You said a number of really good things. The first thing you said is you might need to split a ticket. I love this. So this is Jira Etiquette, Agile, Jira Etiquette. being agile, keeping scope small. This is just like good practices in scoping. And then if it needs to roll over, have a good answer. What constitutes a good answer? Um, if there's a cross team dependency and you can't get your dependency prioritized, like they're working on something really important, okay, that's understandable. A red flag would be, in contrast, if you say that there's a cross team dependency, but actually there's a workaround that you didn't use. So that would be a case of bad judgment. If you're like, hey, this thing is blocking me, but anyone you talk to is like, that shouldn't be a blocker, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of self-check on the credulity or like fact basis of the case that you're making. But basically, pretty much if there's any good logically based reason, then you're good. That covers the judgment piece. Just like literally make sure that it's a logical consequence of something factual. Communicate it and manage expectations. These are all soft skills. That's what I want to call out here. Estimation and time management, communication, collaboration. Really, what we're saying is that soft skills are super powerful on the job. And then we talked about risk mitigation, which I would roll under design, as well as coding well. I'll give you a few resources on this. Blog article 36, awesome design docs. We'll talk about mitigating risk. Mitigate. Yeah. So if you can just build a mental model around this, I don't know how much time we want to spend on this. But basically your Jira tickets are like miniature design docs. So if you know how to do a good design doc, then you will have a native ability to mitigate risk, split up work items, put them in a queue. Maybe there's some dependencies, and then you can estimate properly, right? That's the idea here. So this is the design doc thing. Another one is the time management thing. There's just too much to cover, but you can literally create time out of thin air. And it's super valuable on the job. Go ahead.
I was going to say you can create time out of thin air by parallelizing.
That's true. Or just by getting someone to agree to do the work for you, or getting someone to agree that your thing can be shipped a week later. As long as everyone's happy, you're good, right?
Yeah, it's part of negotiation, right? Everything in life is a negotiation.
Right on. And then coding well, there's so much to go into, but I'll just point you at, I have a fun one. Ham. Yeah. This is just my article on coding best practices, but different people will have different opinions here. That's fine. This is a starting point if you're not sure, like what counts as good code. Maybe your code should be tested, right? Maybe your code should be readable or understandable. So I'll point you to this. When I say you, I mean the audience, of course.
Yeah, and
but
might
basically,
I add here,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, might I add here, in my almost 10 years of experience, I think I really appreciate that you included 3 things: environment agnostic, containerize, tested, and you're not gonna need it. I really appreciate those 3 things.
And you can see how the code overlaps to the design. Like, you're not going to need it is like a scoping concern too. So don't bite off more than you can chew, you know? Undercommit, over deliver, when you're not sure, overestimate. So we're seeing how they tie together. The code, the design, the soft skills, it ties together. And you're ultimately going to be graded at performance review time on all of the above. Again, if it feels like a lot, go back to this basic rubric of generally valued traits. And I want you to imagine a matrix. So there's these skills, and then there's levels of performance. And so cornerstone 1 is get aligned with your manager and onboard well. Cornerstone 2 is be delivering at your level. And I'm talking about across the skill matrix, hard and soft. You're shipping code and people are happy, right? Cornerstone 3 is when you target L+1. So it's the same matrix, but you're trying to get to the next level. And this is basically how you perform well on the job is you act like one level higher than where you are. And if you can do that, the employer's super happy because they're paying for a mid-level, but you're acting like a senior.
Yeah, work for the
you
job
may
you
need
want
to
to have.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say work for the job you want to have because everyone's saying dress for the job you want to have.
Yeah.
Why don't you code for the job you want to have?
Preach. That's a good line. I like that. Code for the job you want to have. Engineers will often be disappointed because they'll say, hey, I'm working at L+1, but I haven't got the promotion yet. You have a couple routes. One is you can be patient and work on a promotion case at your company. Or two is you can go interview somewhere else, you know.
Yeah.
But just know,
another option.
Yeah.
John, really quick, another option could also be if you're working at that L+1 level, look at all the new things you've picked up at your current company, whether it be AI, data analytics, data visualization, whatever it is. Build a project out of it and build some buzz that way. Don't implement their entire product, but implement something that's inspired by where you're working.
Yeah, that can work. So I would just, and you can also like start a discussion with your manager about maybe doing an out of cycle promotion or out of cycle raise. You can have those discussions. They don't always work. So just know it's a common experience and you might need to wait a year. If you value this company, you want to stay here, patience can help. Like a lot of people go through this. At the same time, you don't want to wait for years and years because then you're slowing your career. But particularly if you're at the mid-level, you might need to like wait around a year to get to that senior level. Okay, in the magic loop, let's get to this. So when I said delivering at L+1, this lines up with the magic loop. Ethan Evans, I think. Yeah. So he's a former Amazon VP. Does this paragraph explain it? Okay. You can check out this article, whatever. But basically, it's just what I was talking about. Do your job well. Ask your okay, this is the extra angle. Sometimes an engineer will tell me, hey, I'm working at L+1 already, but I haven't got my promo. There's two things you can do. You can build a case at your company, or you can interview. I'm taking a simple approach here. You gave some other options, and those are fine too. But let's say that you want to stay here and you want to work on a case for promotion. It's just about getting aligned with your manager once again. And crazy idea, what if you just ask them, like, what can I do to help you? This is a really simple link that I see a lot of people missing, which is they want to go through the matrix and check the boxes, but there's a relationship that you need to care about, your relationship with your manager and maybe your skip. So build that social capital, um, and get them interested in promoting you. And this is how you
Yeah.
do that. You basically help them. So it's a reciprocity game.
Yeah. Solve more problems than the number you bring in.
Yeah. So Ethan's addition to my prior advice is emphasize this social capital with your manager and maybe your skip. That's it. That's all the magic loop is. And then the last thing that I'll yap about is Latterly's career journal. So these last three here, formation, the magic loop, and the career journal, the common theme among these three is that they are evidence-based practices to accelerate your career, help you get a promotion, help you get a raise, whatever. So it turns out that journaling is associated with goal attainment. You can journal about all sorts of stuff. You can journal about, I don't know, like your progress on practicing for a marathon, right? And it works. It actually helps you run better. Isn't that weird? You can journal about your nutrition and weight loss, and it will cause improvements to your nutrition and weight loss. Um,
Yeah, I think it may have something to do with you being more mindful
yes,
when you're doing it, right? You're like more what is it, self-reflective,
exactly.
self-aware? Wow.
It's exactly a mindfulness thing. In the spiritual world, this is often called like mindfulness. In the scientific world, sometimes it's called that, but very often it's called like measurement as intervention or the observer effect. So in weight loss, if you can just get a person to step on the scale every day, they tend to lose weight, assuming they have a weight loss goal. And it actually works the other way too. If they have a goal of gaining weight, even though that's rare, it does happen. But it's really just mindfulness. It's like, okay, we're thinking about this every day, and we sort of build a subconscious practice of moving towards that goal like each and every day, right? And it also improves your mental health. So besides goal attainment, it also reduces stress, reduces anxiety, and like, don't take my word for it. You can do the research on journaling for mental health, right? There's a ton of research on this. Like, it works. Don't trust me. Don't trust me, bro. Like, go look at it.
Yeah, just try it. Yeah, try it and see what your mileage is.
Yeah. Um, so so Latterly has a career journal, and if you use it, we can expect you to have improved mental health. Like Happy May, Mental Health Awareness Month. It's a big deal. It's really important, particularly in tech. A lot of people struggle with this. If we're working remote jobs, we may have less social interaction, which could create a mental health deficit, right? Um, so journaling helps with the mental health side of things, but it also helps with the goal attainment. Um, and if you try this out for a quarter and then you push the magic button, you can generate one of those star method anecdotes about your impact, because we have an AI that'll just like look back through your journal notes and build a story about what you did this quarter or whatever.
Nice little brag book type thing.
Exactly. Exactly. So it doubles as a brag book. And yes, the brag book explicitly is a really good career acceleration tool.
Love this. I have something similar, an internal tool I've built. I just get an email every day prompting me to write down some thoughts. So
Amazing.
very similar thing. Use AI to generate posts out of it and various like actionable stuff for me.
Daily basis, great. weekly basis also works. If you
Yeah.
can be disciplined to write down your wins at the end of the week. Monthly basis, okay. I would discourage people from going quarterly or annually, which I sometimes see people advise is like writing down your quarterly wins. I think there's strong research that indicates your mental health will significantly be better if you do this daily, monthly, or weekly, as opposed to quarterly or at a slower frequency.
Yeah, I think you can goal set over the quarter, but I think you
Sure,
should like do those check-ins way more often.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, Don, that's all that I had for today. Anything else?
No, John, this has been really good. It's been what, 6 months, 7 months since we last spoke, and
Yeah,
yeah, I really appreciate the time and especially doing the news with me because I think that's something a lot of people. If you get stuck in the LinkedIn echo chamber of tech job seeking, you're in a constant state of duress. The
yeah,
sky is falling. AI agents are crumbling on our heads. No, it's not the case. When you take a bit more informed, a bit more zoomed out look, I think by and large we are going through a good time, right,
yeah.
John?
I think that's so important to take a step back from your algorithm. You know,
Yeah,
if it bleeds, it leads. Whether we're looking at traditional news or social media, there is a reward for publishing negative content. And Meta will talk about how they're trying to solve this, and they're aware that Instagram, for instance, causes mental health issues in some section of the population. And they'll say, we're working on it, but they haven't fixed the problem yet. And it's not just Meta, it's all of the social media algorithms have this negative reward bias. So fact check your algorithm,
yeah. Take a break
fact
from
check
your
your
algorithm.
news.
Take a break from your own algorithm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Well,
Always good to
John.
speak with you.
Yeah. Likewise.